Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL NewsRadio and KSLSports.com. BYU football is getting ready to host the TCU Horned Frogs, an old Mountain West rival making their return back to Provo for the first time since 2009. And to get a look at this TCU Horned Frogs squad, I'm joined now by JD Andress, lead beat writer for TCU on SI. You can follow him on X at JD Andress11. JD, appreciate you being on board. What's kind of the mood around TCU football after a tough loss last week to Iowa State?
Yeah, man, that's the question that everyone's asking the fans themselves. I mean, there's not much right now that they're feeling great about. I mean, even the players, you look at them, you talk to them, and they're not exactly who they were at the beginning of the season. Three tough losses on the year. You lost to Arizona State in a heartbreaking second half collapse. You went to Manhattan and got embarrassed there in Kansas State, and then you lose to an Iowa State team that's completely depleted. But I will say for now, a lot of the guys that are on this team still are older. A lot of them are playing in their last year, so a lot of them are just playing for pride right now at this point. And sometimes that trumps anything that you're playing for as far as competition wise. But man, I mean, I don't think there's been a low this bad since the loss to Houston last year, whenever they were just completely upset at home right before a bye week.
And I'm glad you brought up that the pride piece, because I kind of wondered, in college football nowadays in this 12-team playoff, once you get to like 3 losses in league play, it feels like, is there going to be guys keeping a wandering eye to maybe the portal in a couple months? So you feel like this TCU team's gonna show up still and give it their best effort on Saturday in Provo?
Yeah, I feel like they should. There's not too many injuries that they're going to have to worry about as far as what's going on around the team. So a lot of these guys, they're really just trying to go out, play with each other for their last few games. I mean, at this point, what we talked about before the bye week was they're playing for potentially a 10-2 finish and maybe backdoor their way into the Big 12 championship. And now they're fighting to essentially not finish 6-6, having to play you guys, then Houston, then Cincinnati. So there's a lot of good teams still on the schedule. So if you're going to roll over, then it's not a good time to, and some scores might get ugly here at the end of the season.
In all 3 of TCU's losses this year, they've had at least 3 turnovers. How big of an issue has turnovers been this year for the Horned Frogs?
You know, that's one of the weird situations because turnovers as a whole really haven't been an issue. It's like he's talked about, just in the losses is does TCU have the turnover problem? I will say for the turnovers for this weekend with Iowa State, Josh Hoover was wearing a glove for the game, which he normally doesn't do, and he said it took a little bit of adjustment, so that led to 2 early interceptions. He was lights out other than that, and then a fumble from Jeremy Payne, third string running back. We could argue. I mean, it's just a lot of bad luck. Hoover's had a few fumbles on a few missed pulls. He's had 2 interceptions that have turned over from tipped balls. He's had a fumble that resulted from a screen pass that just completely bounced off the receiver's arms straight onto the ground. So I don't think TCU has a turnover problem as more as it's a bad luck turnover problem, and you can't do anything about that.
Talk with JD Andress of TCU on SI, getting to know the TCU Horned Frogs. And Josh Hoover, BYU fans know him all too well. 2 years ago, he put up a massive performance. I think still a career high for Hoover in terms of passing yards in his career. How has he evolved from, that game where he had a breakout performance against BYU 2 years ago to now?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of all full circle. That was his collegiate debut as a starter in that game against BYU. And you've seen him evolve a lot since then. Last year, you saw him with the big arm and his big ability to make plays, but he had to figure out a way to cut down on his interceptions. He would take too many deep shots instead of taking a safe option when it was needed. Now you're seeing him take the safe option, and you're not seeing him escape out of the pocket. You're not seeing him take as many deep shots as he did last year. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. He's become a safer quarterback, if you will, but he hasn't became the explosive deep ball quarterback that he was before. But I mean that's to say, I mean he's still 10th in the country in passing yards. Like he's got a not number 9 receiver in the country. Like he's still doing everything he does. This offense just is still struggling to click completely the entire length of a game. And I don't think that's Hoover's fault. I think there's other issues around it. But I think Hoover's taken a step up from what he was when he started, but he's not 100% what you envisioned when he took over.
I'm curious, JD, how much of the issues and maybe lack of clicking on the offense this year is tied to the offensive line, or is it other factors?
Yeah, I think a lot of it you can put it on the offensive line. You're looking at Colton Deary, who's been banged up since like week 4 of the season, hasn't been 100% healthy. The left guard, Cade Bennett, has been completely banged up since like week 1 of the season, and he's still playing. You lost your left tackle during week 2 of the season, went to a torn MCL. Like you're playing with guys that are banged up, and I know everyone is, but like TCU doesn't have a lot of depth along their
Hmm.
offensive line, and they like to rotate guys in. And so right now they don't really have the ability to do that. You saw the offensive line against Iowa State last weekend, and their first half performance was a really, really big struggle for them. But they were without starting center Colton Deary. In the second half, when he came in, it was a completely different offensive line. Their average rush per attempt went up almost a full yard just from him coming into the second half.
Talking with JD Andress here on TCU on SI on Cougar Tracks on KSL News Radio. BYU and TCU kick it off at 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time right here on KSL News Radio and ESPN. And I'm curious, JD, too, about the TCU defense. What are the strengths and weaknesses, and maybe some key players that BYU fans should know about?
Yeah, I'll tell you the key player right now is Caleb Elarm-Zor. He's a middle linebacker. He could basically he's just a complete hybrid type. He could play safety if you need him. Could play, cornerback to cover a slot position. He could play the outside linebacker role. He can just do it all. He's really, really effective in his role. He's great at covering sideline to sideline. He's great in pass coverage. But the secondary as a whole, TCU is known to be a great secondary school. This year, they've kind of taken a step back in that department. Um, Bud Clark, one of the best safeties in TCU football
Mhm.
history. He had 2 interceptions last weekend. Like he's starting to pick things back up where he was last season. Devin Deal, outside linebacker, he's been one of the best at generating pressure on the defensive side. He's really kind of grown into this role that used to be a hybrid role of dropping into pass coverage versus just pass rushing. Now he's essentially just mainly pass rushing and doing a great job at it. The defensive line isn't going to blow your socks off, but what they do a really good job of is playing contain and being able to just plug the holes that they need to. This defense has taken a big step up from where they were last year when they were one of the worst in the conference, and a lot of that is just the guys that they expected to have back did come back and did take the step up. You're looking at Devin Deal, Caleb Elamzor, Bud Clark was back. So this defense has pieces and they've been playing really well. And they're partly the reason TCU has been so effective in games. The West Virginia game, they were lights out. Iowa State, they were lights out. The biggest question for this defense is can they play a full 60 minutes? Once they hit about 50 minutes of the game time, they kind of start to struggle and you see a different set of team in the last 10 minutes.
And I'm curious as well, if TCU wins this game, it will be because they did what on Saturday night?
Probably just had to outscore BYU because TCU hasn't had a first quarter touchdown in I believe it's like not they're 12 quarters, 11 quarters, something like that. It's been a long time. They have not been very good at scoring first quarter touchdowns. Um, and that's something that they can't do against BYU. Against West Virginia, they started out slow. Against Iowa State, they started out slow. You can't have that, especially against a team the caliber of BYU, especially playing in on the road against BYU and how great their fan base is and that atmosphere. If you're TCU, you had to have gotten off to a good start and you had to have kept your foot on the gas. You're not going to be able to win this game in a 21-18 showdown. I mean, this TCU defense is good and they're capable of limiting, Bear Bachmeier and BYU as much as they can, but not for a full 60. The offense will have to be the one that wins this one.
Very intrigued with this matchup on Saturday night. And JD, what do you remember, if anything, on the old days of BYU and TCU from the Mountain West years? Do you remember those? And do those memories still carry over for some Horned Frog fans?
It's funny you actually mentioned that. I was looking at some discourse on X, the public app, everyone's on it, and there was a lot of BYU fans that were like, I will always be afraid of TCU for what they did in the Mountain West days. And there is something with that. Same with like the rivalry with Utah and Boise State. Like those are great days, but this isn't the BYU the Mountain West days, and this isn't the TCU the Mountain West days. So as much as I wish it was, it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, the BYU fans have they've taken some big L's to TCU, whether it was the Mountain West, Independence, and now Big 12 2 years ago. So BYU hasn't got a win over TCU since 2007. They'll look to get that win on Saturday, and TCU will look to get their season back on track, get to 7-3 if they can get the upset win over BYU. JD, appreciate the time. You can follow him on X, JD Andress 11, and check out his bylines on TCU on SI. Looking forward to the rest of your week's coverage this week, JD. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.